We have some news. California Assembly Bill 2624 has been passed by the California Assembly. Now, it's not law yet. The California Senate still needs to vote, and Gavin Newsom still needs to sign it into law. But this has some serious ramifications. Now, what is this seemingly random bill in California, and why does it matter to us? Well, there's a reason it's known as the Stop Nick Shirley Act. Now, for those of you who do not know who Nick Shirley is a young man from Utah who has gone viral as of late for exposing millions of dollars worth of fraud in the United States, most famously in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where in a video he went and visited tens, I think maybe 22, I believe, daycare centers, invalid daycare centers, that were receiving millions of dollars worth of government funding despite having no students. And they were completely empty, they were boarded up, the numbers wouldn't work, and they would show up to these centers, there were no students, yet they were receiving millions of dollars worth of government funding. Multiple of them are rated by the FBI. The most notable is the Quality Learning Center, also hilariously known as the Quality Learning Center, after a misspelling of the sign. But that place got raided. It was receiving $1.9 million worth of funding. The owner has not been arrested, but it has been consequently shut down. The other notable example is the Future Leaders Early Learning Center. The CEO has recently been charged with $4.6 million in fraud, and she was already in custody, actually, for a $250 million fraud scandal involving the Feeding Our Future organization. So this fraud is not new. This fraud's been going on for a while now, and Nick Shirley has been doing a great job at exposing it. And he's been exposing it through public records and through ground investigative journalism. All the information he's gotten is information that the public citizen has access to. However, he then moved to California, and this is where it gets interesting because he exposed millions of dollars of fraud in Minnesota alone. And then he moved his sights on California, and in California, according to his own statement, he has exposed $170 million worth of total fraud. $170 million worth of total fraud. Much of it is similar to Minnesota, where it's daycare centers that are committing fraud to the government. However, in California, it's a different issue, one that I think is even worse, and that's hospice fraud. Now, what's hospice fraud? Hospice fraud is where the fraudsters enroll, without the consent of the victim, they will enroll senior citizens in end-of-life services that their Medicare provides for. But the thing is, they're not actually providing end-of-life services. So they're fraudulent medical practices, they're fake medical practices that obtained information about senior citizens. Oftentimes they don't speak English or they're a minority. They're easy to take advantage of. And they will obtain their information and enroll them in end-of-life services and that they're not actually providing. And most of the time, the victim doesn't even know that they're enrolled in these things. And their Medicare is then being paid to this false medical practice. And in return, they're making millions of dollars. And what Nick Shirley did was he went around and he found the public records and he did investigative journalism and he showed up to all these fake spots where they were empty buildings that were supposed to be medical practice. They were empty buildings, but they were supercars. They were bunch of nice cars around, despite the fact that the buildings were completely empty. They were somehow medical practices, and they were making millions of dollars. And he exposed all these things. Now, why is this law called the Stop Nick Shirley Act? Well, it's an extension of an earlier law that started in 1999, which is the Safe at Home Act program. And the Safe at Home program, what it does is it protects members, or victims, I should say, of domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, human trafficking, child abduction, and elder or dependent adult abuse. And this law was later extended to support more people in 2025. Including reproductive health care workers, public entity employees, and gender-affirming healthcare workers. It was extended to those groups of people later in 2025. That's a separate discussion. However, essentially what that law did was if you were in fear for your life or in fear of your safety due to your job or due to a past event that happened in your life, you fit under those categories, you could submit an application to the government and have your information taken from the public record, stricken from the public record. It also added some nuance to what could be posted online about you, specifically with the intent. So, here more specifically, it says bans knowingly posting or sharing personal information, images online of patients, providers, or assistants with intent to incite violence, cause great bodily harm, or threaten them. So, essentially, if a video of you that includes some of your personal private information gets posted online, if it was done with the intent to cause harm to you or done with the intent so that others might cause harm to you, you can have more of a legal case against them. And you can have it taken out and you can make a lot more money. There already are consequences to doxing and those sort of things, but that just gives you more, there's a greater punishment for it, for those particular groups. Now, what this new law proposes to do, this new law, it's not even a new law, it's an extension of that law, where it extends the protection from reproduction, from abortion clinics, I should say, and then gender affirming care or LGBTQ agenda. It extends those protections to designated immigration support services. What does that mean? That's a good question, because the bill itself fails to actually answer that question. It is ambiguous. Designated, according to the bill, a designated immigration support service means, and I'm reading this word for word, services provided to the immigrant population included, but not limited to, keyword usage there, but not limited to, legal representation, legal assistance, advocacy, case management, humanitarian relief, immigration resources, referrals, translation services, counseling services, and healthcare. That's reference number 1. Let's go number 2. Section 6218.11d. Designated Immigration Support Services Facility means a facility where immigration support services are provided, but not limited to, including, but not limited to, nonprofit organizations, offices, Department of Justice recognized entities, community legal clinics, law offices, accredited representative sites that provide immigration legal services, and healthcare facilities. Including but not limited to. Meaning, the services provided are including this, but they're not limited to this. The facilities that fall into this category include this, but they're not limited to this. It's completely ambiguous. It can mean anything. And it even mentions it. It says translation services, counseling services, healthcare, it goes on and on. It's not limited to those things, though. It can be whatever you want. If it has anything to do with immigrants, illegal, legal, at all. Even if it's a tiny part of your organization or part of your practice, you now fall under the protected category. And you now have you can now make very legal strong case for your people posting your information online. And you can also have your information online taken from the public records, which, by the way, that's how Nick Shirley and other private investigators are exposing the fraud, through public records and through online groundwork via social media. This is a direct attack on that. This is directly going, hey, if you have anything to do with immigration in the slightest, you can now just claim protection. And now there are consequences to people trying to expose that. And especially in California, where this is just happening and nobody's doing anything to stop it. Now, there needs to be more context to this. We need to be honest with everything happening here. There's not just, you can't post anything about them. You can't post anything about them online. There's more content. There's more context to them. So in section 6218.19a, a person, business, or association shall not knowingly publicly post or publicly display, disclose, or distribute on the internet the personal information or image of any designated immigration support services provider, employee, or volunteer, or other individuals residing at the same home address with the specific intent, that's the keyword, with specific intent to do either of the following. And it mentions threats of violence, harassment, and so on and so forth. Section 6218.19c. A person, business, or association shall not solicit, sell, or trade on the internet the personal information or image of a designated immigration support service provider, employee, or volunteer with the specific intent to do either of the following. So that's just context. Yeah, it's specific intent. It has to be, they can only attack it legally if there's specific intent of harm. That doesn't sound that bad, right? That makes sense, even though the words of what falls into the protected category are ambiguous. That's a problem. That should be fixed. At least it defines what specific intent is, right? Well, We'll see why that's not quite true in the moment. 6218.20a. It is unlawful for a person to post on the internet with the specific intent that another person imminently use that information to commit a crime involving violence or a threat of violence that is likely to occur against a designated immigration support service provider, employee, or volunteer, yada, 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 and so on and so forth. The key words here are specific intent that another person imminently. How do you define that? Because Nick Shirley, what he's been doing is he's been exposing this fraud to the public. He's been posting videos online of people and of practices and of facilities that are committing fraud. These people, if this law is passed, if they go reach out to the government and they put themselves in that particular category, they can now say that those videos had a specific intent that another person might harass them, another person might commit a threat of violence or violence against them, because they're exposing it. It's an attack on that person's integrity. They don't have integrity. They're committing fraud, but now they have a case against it. It protects them if they just go and classify under that group. This is why this law is dangerous. Is not only is the words of what defines it as ambiguous as possible to make anybody be able to just go classify themselves as part of that protected group, it also makes it very difficult to go expose it without there being legal issues or legal consequences to exposing it. Because now you can claim, well, the video they posted was with the intent for somebody else to harass us, somebody else to harm us, somebody else to threaten us, or something like that. It's intentionally ambiguous. It's intentionally done to protect the fraud. I mean, we've seen this with what Tim Walz did in his state, where he denied the fraud. He denied everything he could. He called it fake. He called it a lie. He tried everything he could to not defend, but to hide the fraud and to say that it wasn't true, that it wasn't happening. Gavin Newsom has openly mocked Nick Shirley for exposing fraud. And now Gavin Newsom is now trying to get a law passed that will prevent Nick Shirley from doing the great work that he's been doing. And this doesn't apply to Nick Shirley. It's any other investigative journalist out there that wants to help and wants to fraud. This has horrible consequences, and we need to hope that the California Senate, does not get this through. And if that does happen, we need to hope that the courts strike it down, as they should, as this is a violation of free speech. Not only is it ambiguous, that alone should get it struck down, it is a violation of free speech. There is no expectation of privacy in a public space. You have every right to record in a public space, and you have every expectation, and you should be expected to be recorded if you're in a public space. That is a natural consequence of that. And this law, this new bill that's trying to be passed, will essentially limit that. It is essentially limiting free speech. Now, why does this matter to us? Why does this matter to us outside of California? Well, easiest answer is it sets a very, very bad precedent. If California can do this, what else can California do? And if California can do this, what can other states do? Because if California can get away with a law like this, with a bill like this, then imagine what every other state can do. Imagine what other states that might be involved in fraud, that might have scams going on throughout their state. Now what they can do. Look what the laws they can pass to protect themselves from that. They claim immunity from the public eye. That's a problem. So we need to hope that the courts do. The current opinion on this by the crowds is that if it makes it through, the courts will strike it down as unconstitutional. And even if they don't, somebody else will take it to court and it will be struck down as unconstitutional. Those are the two thoughts on this. Those are the current two. Right? And I think the most likely outcome is it can be struck down right away. And if it doesn't, somebody will take it to court. I think that is the very likely most. I do not think this law will make it passed. But knowing what we know of California, there is nothing left to chance, and it is very likely this will happen. So that is the update. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I will continue to provide updates on what happens as they come along. Check out my other channels. They will be linked below in the description. Have a good rest of your day.